The Bitcoin ETF. What the heck is it? Why does it matter? Well, in this video, I want to discuss exactly that topic with you. What are the implications of a Bitcoin ETF for the price of Bitcoin? Why is a Bitcoin ETF actually important for the market? And, well, we are on the soon-to-be eve of another line of denials, approvals, or likely delays from the SEC regarding Bitcoin ETFs. So it's definitely a pertinent time to talk about it. Let's get it. Now, before we dive into the main bit of the topic, if you like this kind of content, smash on the thumbs up button and, of course, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already, and you'll get more videos like this recommended to you by the YouTube algorithm. Let's get into it. So, recently, Franklin Templeton. I mean, that is just like the poshest name. I am Franklin Templeton, sir. Franklin Templeton, big deal. You might not have heard of them. Big asset manager, worth about $1.5 trillion in managed assets. They also would like to get into the Bitcoin ETF game. Now, in total, we have got a lot of people in the Bitcoin ETF game. We've got BlackRock, $10 trillion, assets under management. Fidelity, $4.5 trillion, assets under management. Franklin Templeton, $1.5 trillion. Invesco, $1.5 trillion. WisdomTree, $87 billion, kind of a small player. VanEck, $61 billion. Global X, $40 billion. ARK Invest, $14 billion. Bitwise, $1 billion. And Valkyrie, $1 billion. Total assets managed by all the institutional players right now, jockeying for position, trying to get a Bitcoin ETF, $17.7 trillion. A tiny fraction of the money that these people manage going into Bitcoin would essentially buy all the Bitcoins currently sitting on exchanges. It would take like 0.3% of the money that they manage to go into Bitcoin to buy every single Bitcoin currently sitting on exchanges at the current prices. It's insanity. Crazy numbers, man. Now, why are we having this conversation right now? Well, we are continuing to go through this process of the SEC working with these applications. Now, we did have that grayscale victory in court versus the SEC. Basically, what that means is that the SEC was smacked down by the courts, who said, look, if the markets are reliable enough to have Bitcoin futures ETFs, which are paper garbage, then there's absolutely no reason why you can't approve a Bitcoin spot ETF, because they'd be using the exact same data that's good enough for futures contracts. So why not give people a better product, which is a Bitcoin spot ETF? So the SEC now finds itself in a difficult place in regards to that. They might try to do some appeals. They might try to delay the process as long as possible, even just out of spite, to be honest. But we do have our next deadline, October 17th. Next deadline after that, coming mid-January. Final deadline, mid-March. So I think they may actually push us all the way out until the final deadline. But we'll see what happens, of course, with that. Still, though, it's pretty crazy to think that we could really be seeing a Bitcoin ETF coming very soon, because the SEC doesn't really have much of a leg to stand on anymore. And one of the few things they could probably bring up would be custody. They could argue, well, we had to approve Bitcoin futures ETFs because, yeah, you're right. Actually, now all those excuses we were using before about fraud and manipulation, you're right. That's fine. That's why we approved Bitcoin futures ETFs, because the market has matured enough for that. But custody is just not there. So that's why people have to have futures, paper futures, garbage contracts instead of real exposure to actual spot Bitcoin, because who's going to custody this stuff? What, the NASDAQ? The NASDAQ's going to be good enough to custody stuff? Yeah, the NASDAQ's going to be good enough to custody this stuff. SEC. Come on. JP Morgan's going to be good enough to custody stuff. BlackRock, Coinbase are going to be good enough to custody this stuff. I love this, by the way. Dad, why don't we have any Bitcoin? I sold it all to BlackRock at 25Ks, children. Put me up for adoption, please. The institutions are coming. Just a question of when they're coming. By the way, real quick, if you are not yet signed up to the Wealth Mastery Investor Report, this is my weekly newsletter. We send it to your inbox 3 times per week. It is value-packed as heck. Every single issue, we're talking about the latest news in the cryptocurrency markets. We got all kinds of extra value adds, from altcoin alpha to airdrops to technical analysis and altcoin reports, much more. You can join our 75,000 weekly readers by using the link down below in the description to sign up for free. Thank you. Okay, let's get back into why a Bitcoin ETF is actually such a damn bullish proposition anyway. Because some people are going to ask, well, why do you even need a Bitcoin ETF? I'm just going to go and buy spot Bitcoin and stick it in my hardware wallet and chill, baby. That's amazing. That's like, the way to do it. However, there are some reasons why a Bitcoin ETF is very, very important and will bring in huge amounts of liquidity with it. First off, of course, there is the tax benefits for bringing a Bitcoin ETF into your retirement account. So people with 401ks and IRAs and all that kind of stuff, whatever the name or acronym for retirement account is in your country, well, you're going to be able to put Bitcoin in there and have great tax benefits on that. So that's pretty cool. And that's going to be something that's very attractive to a lot of people because the actual Bitcoin asset itself in a lot of countries is generally taxed unfavorably. Oh, there's some countries like Portugal where they have no tax at all on Bitcoin. Fantastic. That's an exception, not the rule. Most countries have actually worse taxation on Bitcoin compared to other assets. Second big benefit is it expands Bitcoin to a huge number of people. Look, there are a lot of people who might be interested in buying Bitcoin, but who are just literally never, ever going to buy Bitcoin on Coinbase. They're just not. But when they can buy a Bitcoin ETF on their Charles Schwab app or TD Ameritrade or whatever else it might be, then they're going to go, I'll take a Bitcoin ETF. Thank you very much. I would like exposure to this new technology, but I don't want to go and sign up to Coinbase. I don't want to self-custody. I don't want to leave my Bitcoin sitting on Coinbase. I want somebody like the NASDAQ to hold my Bitcoin for me. And that's what's going to happen. They'll get what they want. That'll bring a lot of new people into Bitcoin. And that, of course, means a massive liquidity boost. We could see billions and billions and billions of dollars coming in. In fact, Bitcoin spot ETFs could bring $30 billion in new demand. That is according to the New York Digital Investment Group. $30 billion is a lot of money. The last time I checked, that would actually buy approximately half of all the Bitcoin currently sitting on exchanges at the current prices. Of course, if you try to buy half all the Bitcoin currently sitting on exchanges at the current prices, what's that going to do? It's going to send the price up. Massive liquidity boost to the markets here. Also, interestingly, as an add-on to the liquidity conversation, bringing in a Bitcoin ETFs allows other ETFs to buy that Bitcoin ETF and include it in their ETF. So you might see like a Web3 ETF that has Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs, because there will be an Ethereum ETF, and they're going to have MicroStrategy, and they're going to have Coinbase, they're going to have Bitcoin miners. That's an ETF product. You might see it added into all kinds of different ETF products, innovation products, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a very real possibility here for bringing more liquidity and more demand for these ETF products. Of course, big deal as well for people who want to buy Bitcoin ETFs is that this is real Bitcoin access without having to do all the self-security stuff. You get the same Bitcoin that the guy who goes to Coinbase and sticks it in his ledger does. Well, you don't get to control your Bitcoin, and a third party is controlling it for you, which is problematic in the history of Bitcoin. But still, you're getting real access to Bitcoin without having to do the self-security, unlike the current options for Americans where you can go and buy a Bitcoin futures contract, which sucks. It's not the same thing by any means. Just a piece of paper, means nothing. Tracks the price, but it ain't the real Bitcoin. And perhaps most importantly is the signal it sends in of itself. This sends a huge signal that Bitcoin is now a legit asset to normies, aka Bitcoin's not a scam. So when your Uncle Joe at Thanksgiving says, "Oh, isn't that Bitcoin stuff a big scam?" No, Uncle Joe, no, okay? Put the beer down. Listen to me for a second here, buddy. BlackRock is going after a Bitcoin ETF. Fidelity is going after a Bitcoin ETF. And when they are approved, then you're going to be able to buy a Bitcoin ETF just like you would buy a gold ETF or anything else. And of course, Bitcoin is digital gold. And what's interesting in that conversation is, well, what happened to gold after it got a spot ETF back in 2004? And you got to think the markets of 2004, very different to the markets of today. Gold, definitely not as popular especially with like millennials and other younger age brackets of investors, as gold is. So there's all that stuff. But anyway, gold rallied over 300% in the years after a spot ETF was launched. In fact, it was largely up only for quite a while. And yeah, there was a big sell-off and stuff and the global financial crisis, whatever. But essentially, you saw gold go from around $350 all the way up to about $1,800. Massive, massive rally. And when we get a spot Bitcoin ETF, we could see billions of new buy pressure come in that could see Bitcoin putting in a similar rally, probably in a much shorter amount of time. It won't take 5 or 6 years like it did for gold. It's probably going to happen over 1 or 2 years. Still, though, massive implications here for Bitcoin ETFs on the market. Let me know, are you bullish on Bitcoin ETFs, or do you think they're going to be a big old fat nothing burger? Let me know in the comment section. I'll see you next time.